me tonight to talk more about this hot button issue and how it might play out in the Senate elections is Assemblyman Mike Gianaris, who is running for an open Queens Senate seat. Correct? Open.
Correct.
George Honorado, he was a no vote, and you are replacing him, and you are a yes.
That is also correct.
Well, we assume you're going to replace him. We should say you do have a Republican opponent.
Yes, I hope to replace him.
Right, but it's a Democrat-dominated district. It's very likely that you will be here in Albany come January in the Senate chamber.
I appreciate your optimism, Liz. Thank you.
Yeah, well, I'm nothing if not optimistic. So do you believe that this issue will help or hurt the Senate Democrats in their quest to keep the majority?
Well, I think what people saw in the last couple of days from Carl Palladino was a continuing display of absolutely disgusting and intolerant behavior. And there's a political dynamic to this as well. I mean, I'm embarrassed as a New Yorker that a major party nominated this guy to lead our state. It's reached the point where it's a national embarrassment. You put on the national news and this is all they're talking about, and not in a good way. And you've seen the Senate Republicans rush to embrace him. The top two leaders of the Senate Republican caucus, one of them put out a statement praising him and thankful that he's heading their ticket. And the other one talked about how he's going to help them win back the chamber. So this is something where I think the people now, Carl Palladino became a phenomenon because he's angry. Everybody knows he's an angry man. And the people are angry, and we get that. But the political dynamic has shifted a little bit now, especially in the Northeast. You're seeing that people are beginning to realize that there's actually a choice here. And the choices are, in one case, extreme, and in the other case, maybe a group that they would like to see do things a little differently.
You know, hold on though, because when you talk about extreme, you know, that's actually something that Palladino has tried to turn back on Andrew Cuomo. Now, certainly he has extreme views that are extremely to the right, Carl Palladino, on issues like abortion, social issues, gay marriage, etc. And he says, actually, no, Andrew Cuomo's support for late-term abortion, for example, or legalization of same-sex marriage, neither of which are things that Andrew Cuomo's out there touting and yelling from the rooftops, but he does support, is extreme to people who find those things abhorrent.
Well, Andrew Cuomo's positions, I don't find any of them extreme, and I don't think the people of this state who give him such a high favorability rating find them extreme. But we need to look at, even beyond Carl Palladino, we need to look at the candidates the Republican Party is putting up throughout this state and throughout this country. You have a candidate for Senate in Connecticut that has deemed it entertaining to put a woman on all fours and have her bark like a dog in a wrestling ring. You have Carl Palladino with the numerous instances that he's brought up.
Bring it back to New York. Bring it back to New York.
You have a candidate for Congress against Nita Lowey, who has written papers calling for separation of races.
And the state Republican Party has actually denounced him. You're talking
except the state Republican Party and the Senate Republicans in particular have thrown their hands in a big hug around Carl Palladino, and he's part of the same problem.
So you think it's going to work for you, is what you're saying. You think that the point here is that running against Carl Palladino will actually not only help the Democrats control the Senate, but also potentially grow.
I think the voters in this state are beginning to realize that this is not just the case of a protest vote against a group that they would like to see do better, but an actual choice. And putting people like Carl Palladino in charge of this state is dangerous.
Okay, but the problem is that he does speak to a voice of upstaters, and of course we are an upstate show. So upstaters who feel, and I ask everyone who comes through here this same question, who feel disenfranchised by the downstate dominance in the Senate Democratic Conference. I mean, the reality is, no matter, you can say, and I've heard from numerous people, including Gustavo Rivera, who was here last week, that's why we need to elect more upstate Democrats, and that's great, but you'll still have the majority of people in the conference driving the agenda from New York City.
Well, and I think you could look at changes even within New York City and the delegation from New York City that speaks to that issue. Number one, yes, we have great senators like David Valesky and Darrell Albertine who are going to be returned to the Senate, hopefully, which will continue to influence the policies of the Senate in a direction that people might be more happy with. But we also have people like Gustavo Rivera, who replaced Pedro Espada. We have Jose Peralta, who replaced Hiram Monserrat. There are changes going on to the point where you can expect to see a new Senate Democratic majority come January in a way that is going to be much more reasonable than some of these people we've seen who are no longer in the Senate.
Okay, but what about marriage? I mean, what does this mean? I have also spoken a while ago now, but to the Democratic Conference leader, John Sampson, who would not commit to putting marriage back on the table for a vote, the floor for a vote, because it's not something that people want to talk about necessarily. People want to talk about jobs. People want to talk about the economy. This issue is very divisive.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think people want to talk about jobs in the economy because that's where the suffering is across all classes of people, and they're right to be concerned about that. That is the issue number one for everybody, is getting the economy back on track. As for the issue of marriage, I think there's progress being made for those of us who advocate its enactment. As you pointed out, there's 3 of the no votes that are no longer going to be in the Senate come January, replaced by 3 people who will be voting yes, hopefully.
We think.
At least 2, but hopefully 3. And that issue continues to be important to a lot of New Yorkers who care about not discriminating against an entire class of people.
Will you push for it to be brought up in 2011?
Will I push for it?
Yeah.
Absolutely. I've been a sponsor of that legislation in the Assembly for a number of years. I've voted in favor of it 3 times. I'd love to see it become law.
Have you spoken to John Sampson about it?
I have spoken to John Sampson. I've made my position clear, and I think he shares it. And we're all anxious to see this come forward and be enacted in New York State. I think we've been clear about that.
But has he given you a commitment that it's going to be coming to the floor?
No, Liz, we're in October before the elections even occurred. I mean, there'll be plenty of time to figure out what's going to come to the floor after the election. Hopefully we'll still be in the majority and we'll be able to make that decision.
Okay, but there are also a number of close races. I mean, I've had Republicans sit where you're sitting and tell me they believe that they're at least going to be able to maybe deadlock the chamber 31-31, which would be, we saw what happened last year. I mean, what do you think the likelihood is of that?
Anyone that can predict, or is telling you they can predict what's going to happen in 3 weeks should be in another line of work if that's what they can do. But no one knows. It's a volatile situation. This is one of the more volatile electorates we've seen in quite some time. It's the reason why we have some of these extremist candidates being put out on the Republican side, because people are emotional, people are angry, and rightfully so. But what's going to happen in the next 3 weeks? Who knows what crazy thing Carl Palladino is going to say tomorrow that sets this election off in a different direction.
You know, Andrew Cuomo is now very involved. He has given $1 million to the state Democratic Party to help with this coordinated campaign, a get out the vote effort, et cetera. And Jay Jacobs, the Democratic chairman, has said that he's involved with the Senate Democrats. Isn't that a little bit of a dangerous position? Because if you are not successful in holding on to the majority, then, and Andrew Cuomo is successful, he has to work with a Republican majority in the Senate that is not interested in working with him, maybe holds a grudge.
Well, I think I can't speak for the Republicans in the Senate and how they would handle something like that, but this is the political season. Andrew Cuomo is a leader of our party, and I think he's in the right place when he's supporting other Democratic candidates. I mean, that's what governors have done throughout all times. What I hope will happen is that Andrew Cuomo realizes a Democratic majority in the Senate will help move his positions forward better than a Republican Senate, and that's why he's stepping forward to help us maintain the majority and enact many of his policies that the overwhelming number of New Yorkers agree with.
But it didn't work that way for Governor Patterson.
Well, things work differently for different people, and we'll see what happens in this case. But the fact remains, look, we're in the political season right now. Come January, we'll be in the governing season. And regardless of what the results of the election are, I would hope people would be responsible enough to work with whoever the governor is at the time.
You have a redistricting bill. This is a nonpartisan redistricting commission. We've spoken about it here before. This is a push that Mayor Koch is making, the former mayor of New York City. It's a big push this year. The good government groups say that they're very hopeful. Do you believe, and again, have you spoken to John Sampson about whether that will be coming up? And because he has signed that pledge, and he's left your current leader, Shelley Silver, out in the cold on that.
Well, one thing that's clear is whether it's during this session or early in the next session, something's going to happen to alter the way we do redistricting in this state. I'm confident in saying that there's no way we're going to do a redistricting plan the way it's been done in the past. We're going to have a governor, Andrew Cuomo, who has pledged not to support a redistricting done the old-fashioned way. We're going to have a number of us in the Senate who are not going to go along with that either. And
You'll vote no.
I will not support a plan that is done the way it's been done in the past. And I think that one thing we're going to see is there will be a change. Now, whether it'll be my bill specifically or something akin to it or some other solution, I don't know the answer to that. But the momentum is generated to the point where there's enough of us, I think, who hold this position that we will see action on this.
Well, you are all in. You've actually given a lot of money to the Senate Democrats, a couple $100,000. Am I right about that? So you have a lot riding on this election. In the meantime, I want to thank you. We only have, what, 3 weeks to go before we know?
3 weeks from tomorrow.
So it is probably going to be a wild ride between now and then. In the meantime, Mike Gianaris, thanks very much for coming in.
Thanks, Liz.